We fear death ahead of us. But death is also behind us, from whence we came. Until we were born, we were in the same realm of death where dying people go. I have been convinced of this many times, having been in contact with dying people for over 30 years. Their numerous stories are proof that in addition to our world, there is another world in which everything is organized according to laws that are beyond our understanding, says psychotherapist, Professor Andrei Gnezdilov. Andrei is sure that human consciousness is not destroyed after death. The professor is also convinced that a person with his will can approach or give the date of his death. To prove it, Andrei Gnezdilov gives stories from his medical practice. Once Andrei Gnezdilov was near a dying patient. She asked the doctor to switch on a music box. And at the moment when a touching melody was playing, the woman stopped breathing. The relatives who were near the dying woman begged the doctor to do something. The professor managed to bring the woman back to life. When the patient regained consciousness, the doctor explained to her that she had clinical death. In response, the woman smiled and said, "No, it wasn't death, it was life." Analyzing the stories of his patients, Professor Gnezdilov tried to answer the question, what is death? It occurs when a person's breathing stops, the heart and the brain stop working, which can no longer receive information from outside and send it to the outside world. Then how does a person continue to realize reality and talk about his experiences when he manages to be brought back to life? Andrei Gnezdilov believes that the human brain is just a transmitter needed to receive information. Besides this transmitter, there is something more powerful and deeper in us. Something that is not destroyed after death. Professor Gnezdilov is also sure that death is given to us as a reward and a respite, with the onset of which the human consciousness does not disappear, but only changes its state. Many writers have tried to portray life as immortal, but it has been a terrible, terrible immortality. What is endless life? An endless repetition of earthly experience, a stoppage of development, or endless aging? It is difficult even to imagine the agonizing state of a man who is immortal. Death is a reward, a respite. It is abnormal only when it comes suddenly, when man is still on the rise, full of vigor. We think that someone predetermines our days for us. In fact, a person leaves when his program he was designed for or his aspirations are over, says Andrei Gnezdilov. The professor is sure that a person can measure his or her own life, both expand and narrow it. In his practice, Andrei Gnezdilov has seen many cases when a person inwardly agrees to leave, as he or she has nothing new to offer in this world. Such a person subconsciously attracts the disease to him. But as soon as this person finds a stimulus in life, his condition improves. When a patient realizes that he is needed here, then he lives as long as he wants, believes Andrei Gnezdilov. As an example, the professor cites the story of one woman. According to doctors' forecasts, she had a couple of weeks to live. The woman was raising her underage daughter alone. Most of all, she was worried about the fact that after her death the girl would have no one to shelter her and an orphanage would be waiting for her. The dying woman prayed that she would continue to live until her daughter became an adult. And despite the doctor's prognosis, the woman lived for 2 more years. Exactly that long until her daughter became an adult. There are other similar stories. Andrei Gnezdilov tells about one woman who did not want to die in winter. She wished with all her heart to wait for the spring sun and died with the arrival of spring in the minutes when the bright sunlight flooded her room. Another dying grandmother did not want to leave this world before Easter. Thanks to this incentive, the patient managed to live until the Easter service. Andrei Gnezdilov also has many stories when a person had no prerequisites for leaving, but the patient died because he had no incentives to live. He was dying because he had made that decision, the psychotherapist explains. One dying woman said to me, "Speak to me frankly, I am not afraid of death." I was surprised. How so? Everyone is afraid, although there is nothing wrong with it. The woman replied, "In my case it's different. I have lived a happy life. I married for love, gave birth to a desired daughter, nursed a granddaughter. I have learnt everything I can about life, and now I would like more." Professor Gnezdilov recalls a patient who once said he was dying. Gnezdilov hurried to reassure the patient, explaining to him that he would still live, as the patient had no physiological preconditions for death. But the patient stood his ground. "I know this is death," he said. The patient turned out to be right. He died 2 days later. A similar story happened to Andrei Gnezdilov's own grandmother. She felt her death approaching and asked her daughter to bring a priest, who helped her to leave in peace. Andrei Gnezdilov believes that the day of a person's death is not an accident, however, as well as the day of his birth. Often birth can be connected with the day of death of some relative. Because children often repeat the life story of one of their relatives. Coincidence can be found even in details, notes Professor Gnezdilov. And life itself can be compared to a circle. At the end of life we return to the point where we started it. There are a lot of common moments between death and birth, says Andrei Gnezdilov.